Alright, so many of you know me as a talker, but I'm not a speaker, so forgive me. I'm not sure. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jill Henry. I'm here to share my testimony, but my testimony is a little bit different than maybe some of the others that I've heard. Like I know there's so many people that know exactly the moment that they gave their life to Christ. They can pin it down to the date, the event, the time, everything, and that's not my case. There's also people that have been in the church all their life and they don't know a day that they didn't know who Jesus was, and that is not my case. God's given me a long and winding story that I'm very blessed to have. I'm very blessed to be able to share. And it has changed me dramatically from the person that I was to the person that I am today. And I thank God for that. And it's amazing to look back and think of the things that I've gone through before I knew God, and knowing that He was there. And now that I do know God, and being so blessed and so grateful that He's been there to get me through all the stuff. Who's tracking my space there? So also He's given me some characters in my story that I think is kind of interesting, and I feel honored to be able to share those types of stories, because sometimes when people hear my testimony, they're not listening to it as they want to hear my Christian testimony. They just want to hear the story of the characters that were in my life and how interesting it is. And then I look back and I say, well, how amazing is that person that may have never sat and listened to my testimony about anything that had to do with God or Jesus, Christian, and anything like that, but they're listening because of the characters that are in my story, and yet I get to plant those seeds. And I think that's an amazing thing that God gave me. So backstory is that I grew up here in Melba, CUNA, my whole life. I have several siblings. My dad died when I was 3, so my mom was a single mom. And I had one brother that was about 2 years older than me that we grew up together, Jack and Jill, ha ha ha. And then I had several others. Most of them are old enough to be my own parents, actually. So pretty much it was Jack and I being raised together by our mother, and my mother was older. And she worked very, very, very hard. She started J&M Sanitation. She helped start CUNA Melba New Gym. She did just all this amazing stuff. But at the same time, she played hard. So she drank. She drank a lot. She danced. She was a dancer. She was known for her dancing. She'd have people lined up to dance with her. And that was just the normal life that we lived. We my brother and I would go to the back of the Red Eye in CUNA and be like, hey Marge, have some money for some ice cream or whatever. That was just like normal. But we took trips. We took lots of trips. And Mom would stop at bars along the way between here and Mexico, and we would play outside of the bars and play the Matchbox cars, and we would build these wonderful things. And it was just normal. It was just the way it was. And so that was the life I grew up in. It was a lot of parties, a lot of outside barbecues, a lot of drinking, sometimes not the best characters around, sometimes really great people that everybody was an aunt and uncle and so on and so forth. But that did leave my brother and I to fend for ourselves quite a bit. And like I said, we'd run to the back of the bar and try to call for our mother. And so we entertained ourselves a lot. She was an excellent provider, but she wasn't necessarily the nurturer. But I do, as I get older, realize that she was doing the best she had with what she was taught growing up. So that led to the neighbors around us. The neighbors around us decided that perhaps that Jack and I needed a little extra help, and so they would take us to church with them. And we went to Awanas, and I remember memorizing John 3:16, and I remember the little derby car races. I remember all that stuff. But I also remember that when we came home from church with the family and we came home from the Awanas, our life went right back to the way that it was. And nothing really stuck, and it wasn't carried out, and we weren't seeing it in our everyday life, and so it was just like a thing we did with the Slagles. And but nonetheless, it was a thing we did with the Slagles. Growing up, I was a little bit on the wild side. I lived the same life that I saw growing up, so it seemed very natural to me in high school to drink beer, to go out, to party, to go to Grandview, go to the dances in Bruno, to stay out all night, I had tons of friends, and I had lots of fun and tons of laughter, and I just thought that that was just exactly what it's supposed to be. That's exactly how my mom grew up. She had the greatest times, and I was just carrying on the same life that I knew. I kind of lived life by the seat of my pants. I believed I was happy, and like I said, I laughed a lot and I had fun. High school, I had lots of things to do, so I quit school and I kept partying, and there was like 3-day parties that I would go to, and everything was just great. I mean, I wasn't a mean person, I wasn't like a criminal person, I wasn't out there vandalizing or anything. I was just there for the good time. So when I was 19, that very strong mother got sick and she passed away in 2 months. I kind of had to figure stuff out a little bit more. But I knew God was the big guy in the sky, the big father in the sky, but it wasn't something that was a part of my life. About a year later from that, I got pregnant with my first daughter in Montana. Very quickly into that pregnancy, the guy that I thought was supposed to be like the love of my life, the guy that pursued me for years, blah, 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 we broke up. The reality, I guess, was too much. It wasn't as fun to be pregnant and become a parent. So that obviously changed my life once again. I just had lost my mother. Now I'm pregnant and I have nothing. And then I got fired from my job and I got this, blah, 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 all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, here we go, tailspin for jail, which was very common. Happens about every 2 years in my life, it seems like. So I went back to my mom's house, which was now in the hands of my brother, and he came home from the military, so I moved in with him, got through my pregnancy. And then eventually I moved back out, got my own place, and then I resumed the life that I knew. I went back to partying with my friends and going to the bar, and I was cocktail waitress, and life was good, and blah, 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 and all that good stuff, and I was having fun. There was no harm in anything I was doing. I was just having a good time, and I was really good at it, and I was funny, and everybody liked me, and all that. So, I said about every 2 years, we'd have either a breakup with a boyfriend, a switch of a job, something like that. There was never a constant thing in my life. It was like about every 2 years we had to shake it up. We had to change something. I don't know why that is, but it just seemed to be the thing. It almost became a joke in our life. Like, oh, we lived here 2 years. We should probably start looking for someplace else. I was also back and forth with Montana's dad, and break up and get back together, break up, get back together. Really not a lot of constant. But again, I just thought this is life. This is just the way life goes. It's the way I grew up. It's just the way that it was. After all, I thought he was the one who was the father of my kid. I grew up without my dad when I was 3, so I thought it's so important that I salvage that relationship. So here I am. So I'm dating him, dating other people, going on, doing all the stuff, smoking, drinking, living the good life. But over that same time, there was still those people that kept popping up in my life like the Legos growing up, and they would talk to me about God, and they talked to me about Jesus. They talked to me in casual conversation. They'd have intentional hearts. They'd invite me to church. I had one lady that just brought me a Bible. And at the time, I thought, thank you, and that's great. And I went to the church, and I cried at a couple services, and I really felt like I was impacted, and then I go right back to the life that I was in. And I'm very grateful for all of those people, because I didn't know it at the time, but they were planting so many seeds in me that I was like a chia pet just waiting to be watered. So I went to some of the churches. Again, like I said, I just went right back to the life that I lived, so there wasn't really a whole lot of impact in my life except for those seeds being planted that I didn't even think about. In 2009, money was really short, like for a lot of people, and I applied for food stamps. And so I remember one day I was sitting on my porch, and I thought, I can't be that person, Lord. I can't be that person that goes and buys my food with food stamps, and then walks up to the Winco cash counter and buys my cigarettes with cash. Like, I can't be that person. I'm either gonna need the assistance, or I don't, and I need to quit this. And so I prayed to this God that all these people have been telling about. If you're real, take this from me. Take the cigarettes from me. I don't want to be that person. And so I crushed that pack of cigarettes and I threw them in the little bucket, and it just stopped. And mind you, I had tried quitting with Chantix, with cold turkey, with pills, with patches. I mean, you name it. In pregnancy, I quit, and I went right back to. I quit. And I had no idea the power that God had. And that day was like an eye-opener, but it wasn't quite the eye-opener. But it was a step. So in 2010, about a year later, when my daughter was 13, her dad, that on again, off again love, the one that I thought was going to be there, and I was going to keep salvaging that relationship as many times as I could, because man, that was just going to be the way it is, and I was going to salvage my family. He didn't think so, and he had remarried somebody, and they got to an argument, and he also drank, because that made sense to me. That was who I'd hang out with. And he committed suicide one night when he was drunk, after a fight with his wife. So there we go into another tailspin. I didn't know which way was up, and I thought, what is my future if it's not to be building my family back together? I tried to figure out all out on my own, and that wasn't working. And so I moved back in with that brother again into my mom's old house. And they go to church across the street. My brother and his sister, and my sister-in-law and their kids. And so I had promised that I would never show up at their house with an ounce of alcohol in my system. If I ever took one drink, I would not come home. I would stay at a friend's. I would do something just out of respect for them, because they are very much against any of that. And so I tried my best to prevent that. And I look back now and I think those were like little nuggets, little things that God was prompting me. But I still ended up spending a lot of time at friends' houses. And I still never quite gave it up. But at the same time, Montana, she was in junior high, and she started coming here at the Melvin Friends Youth Group. And she started hanging out with girls that were lifting her up. She started doing things like helping remodel a bathroom. The pastor of the church went to Mexico once a year. And she would help do all these projects around here. And I thought, I really like what she's doing over there. And I like the change I'm seeing in my middle school daughter. And she had been through a lot, right? And so any positive change was amazing. And so I started going to church here. And I joined her on Sundays. But I still felt really uncomfortable. And as most of you know, during the greeting time, I would go in the bathroom and I would hide and I would cry. Because I felt like everybody in here had their groups, they had their cliques. This person knew that person knew that person, and I didn't know any of them, and they all had their poop in a group. Nobody here was messed up. Everybody was just like, right? And I was at the bar last night. I was just cussing up a storm on the way to church with all the frustrations of life, right? So I thought that I don't fit in, I don't want to talk to these people. So I'd hide and I'd cry. Later that year, in 2010, so this is after Montana's dad has died, I've had a few little things of God kind of nudging me along to things, and I was down at the bar here, and I made a lot of stupid choices, let's just say. And I got into a bar fight with two girls. I got really drunk. I did a lot of really stupid things. And then at the end of the evening, I couldn't go home because I made that promise to my brother, so I needed to go somewhere. So I rode up to Reynolds. Actually, I didn't ride up to Reynolds Creek. I think I did anyway. Got up from the top of Reynolds Creek Road. If anybody has driven that road, it is steep and it's winding. And I did that drunk. And the next morning, I thought to myself, I thought, Jill, what have you done? You could have killed yourself. You could have hurt somebody else. You could have been arrested. I mean, just the fight alone probably could have put you in jail, and somehow that didn't happen. And it was like that big eye-opener of like, if you don't stop what you're doing, you're going to make your daughter an orphan, just like you. And that was like my big moment. And I didn't know that it was God's ear. or God's word in my ear. And so I prayed, and I thought it worked when I first spoken, so I'm going to pray again. Please take this alcohol from me. And he did. And this has been my life up to this point. And I did really good for a couple months, and then I went down. Actually, I'd still hang out with my friends at the bar, but I had this thing that I would say that I come home before everybody start to cry, because if you go to a bar, eventually at some point in the evening, people get just drunk enough that somebody in that bar is going to cry about something. So I'd say, well, I'll just go down there and hang out with them until somebody starts crying, and I'll go home, and then, I'll stay out of the drama, and I'll stay out of all the bad things. But one day I was down there, and my friends kept telling me, am I making crackly sounds? What have we done wrong? Nothing too much. So anyway, so my friends, of course, they're so sweet. They were like, Jill, everything in moderation. You don't have to quit drinking. I mean, that's just stupid. Just in moderation. You can have a beer. And so I thought, you know what, fine. So I had a beer, and I felt so horrible about myself. And I thought, what are you doing? This is so dumb. I didn't realize that was conviction. I didn't know any of these church words. So then I stopped again. I never had another beer after that. And I went for almost 22 months without having another beer. In 2011, shortly after that, in the very spring, I got married to a guy that I shouldn't have gotten married to. It was very impromptu, and I thought, oh my gosh, Scott's gone. I'm 30-something years old, and I've never been married, and I need to do this anyway. So I got married to this guy. Turns out he had more skeletons in his closet. He was a rival cemetery. So it was a very bad deal. We quickly got divorced. But this time I didn't leave. I didn't uproot. This time I didn't leave. I didn't uproot everything. I didn't do my 2-year plan. I stayed right where I was. In the, what is this? Sounds like I'm sneezing every 2 seconds. I thought he was a big problem. This book. So anyway, so I got married, didn't work, got divorced, but it was like that tailspin just kept happening in my life. I thought, oh my gosh, I just got married, I thought everything would be better, and then it turns out he was a fraud, and everything just, so I started going back to Melba Friends Church. And still I hid in the bathroom, and I felt very out of place. But I started hanging out with her more. I started changing the behaviors that I had. I stopped going down to the bar. I stopped hanging around with a lot of friends that I had hung around with year after year, because I knew I needed something different. I had to have something different in my life. And this is the only thing that made sense, that made me feel any better at all. But I still didn't quite get it. And so I started spending New Year's Eve here instead of the bar. That was fun. I spent a lot more time with my daughter. I did a lot of I don't know, I just started living a little bit different. But then I'd ask questions. I'd ask questions about God. I'd ask questions about, like, what is it, and what am I supposed to do, and what's the Bible, and all that kind of stuff. And I remember walking across Fellowship Hall, and I asked Chris one day, and I said, all I want to know is that God's going to be there for me. I mean, I just want him to be with me all the time. I just want to know that he is. I kind of felt alone most of my life. And Chris just looks at me and he goes, Jill, he says that all the time. And I said, okay, well then show me. Show me where he says that. I want to see it for myself. And that became kind of like my thing. Show me. And so we would go to the Bible and we would find it and we would read it. And then there was another young couple here. And they said, you know what? We want to do that more. We want to go right to the Bible. We don't want to do, opinions, interpretations, all that kind of. Let's start doing that. Let's start just really opening up the Bible and really studying in the Bible. And so we started doing like these Monday night dinners, and we'd swap back and forth. And then I joined Darlene's Bible study she had at her house, and then I started doing all these things, and it became like church was like my new bar. And I'd never felt so good in my life. The funny thing is that let's get ahead of myself. Anyway, so I started doing a Francis Chan Crazy Love thing here on Tuesday nights, and I'd show up, and I remember I'd tell jokes to Chris about, hey, after this Bible study, I'm going to go with my friend Casey, and we're going to watch Sons of Anarchy. True story. And Chris, if you don't know, Sons of Anarchy is not a Christian movie at all. But Chris would say, well, maybe we could run over, maybe that's a reason why it's running over, and you're not going to make that show. And so I'd go to the Crazy Love, and then I'd go out and watch Sons of Anarchy, and then I'd come back, and then we got to chapter 4, and it was Profile of the Lukewarm. And I felt it just so loud, God telling me, Jill, you can't be lukewarm anymore. You can't have one foot in, one foot out. You can't be both people. You have to surrender. And that was a huge, huge deal for me. So I stopped watching Sons of Anarchy almost immediately. Montana and I continued to do our Monday night Bible studies. We continued to do as many things that we could to learn and to read, and spending time with other people in the church. And I don't even know how to explain the changes and how dramatically my life changed. I feel like I have to tell all this backstory just so that you can really get the impact of how much I've changed, but I feel like it's really still not explaining how much God changed me. But little did I know that at the same time that I was posting about all these different Bible studies and things that I was going to, that my future to-be husband was watching me. He was watching me on Facebook. He was watching me convert. He was watching me change. He was watching me grow. We knew of each other because we all went to Melba, but we hadn't met, we hadn't talked, we hadn't anything. But he had asked me, my friend, on Facebook or something, I'm not sure whatever. So he was watching this, and I thought that one of the things that I thought as I started doing all these things, I thought, life's going to be boring. I'm not going to be partying. I'm not going to be drinking and sitting on fire and all this stuff. And then I discovered joy. And I feel like God gave me joy. He gives us all joy to trump happiness. And to show me how much deeper that He loves me than the world does. So I was a very curious little baby Christian, and I asked a lot of questions again, and I wanted to know, why are all the church denominations? Why do we all go? We got Baptist, and we got this, and we got that, and we have all these people. We all study from the same book. But why are we all divided? If we're all Christians, shouldn't we all be Christians? And I get locations, but why are we all torn on some of these ideas and interpretations, and we focus on one thing or another? And that just did not make any sense to me. And so I kept trying to seek that, and I couldn't figure out why. So we would do church hopping. We go to this church and that church and this church and then end up here and try to learn about those differences. But in 2013, we had some very serious turmoil in our life yet again, and issues in our family. And so this time I did pick up and I moved away, and I moved to Emmett and I ran. And I stopped attending church regularly, and I began drinking on occasion again. I unfriended a whole lot of people, including that guy that was watching me. I began to question myself and my faith, and I remember thinking of myself as a hypocrite, because I was like, I get God. He's like, you Father, this guy. I get the Holy Spirit. I hear it. I hear Him talking to me. But I'm like, I still don't get Jesus. How is Jesus and God the same? How is it 3 in 1? And I don't get it, and that really confused me. And then the more I talked to some people, because I was Bible studying with some legalists and theologians, and that just confused me way more. And so I had a really hard time. Literally, it was almost a full year. I just felt like a total hypocrite. I stopped going to church, and I was just like I don't know what to do. And I don't even remember what it was, but I was looking something up, seeking answers on that. I don't even know what I read exactly. But all of a sudden, just my peace just was restored. And I realized, you know what? I don't need to understand how God is 3 in 1. I just need to know that Jesus died for me, that He rose, that He loves me, that I'm going to be with Him in heaven, that I need to be in a relationship with Him, I need to be talking to Him, and I need to obey when he speaks to me, and I need to follow when he guides me. And one day in heaven, I'll understand all this stuff. And that's what I needed to focus on. And so I felt like, okay, thank you. And it's weird to say, I can't even explain it, but I just felt like this peace. So in 2014, I was like, all right, let's get back on these questions. And so we're going to take a trip, me and my daughter and our dog, and we're going to get in the car, and we're going to go to Louisiana, and on the way, we're going to stop at all these different churches, and we're going to do our church hopping again. So we stop at the Life Church in Utah, and we go down to several little places. We go to West Monroe in Louisiana, which is the Duck Dynasty Church, the Duck Commander, all that kind of stuff. And we had our dog with us, so I had to arrange for a dog sitter, so then Diane comes into the story. And I meet Diane, she's the dog sitter. She watches the dog, and we go to church, and it was wonderful. The people were so genuine, so nice. It was just amazing, and it was moving. And then it was time for us to leave, so we go down to New Orleans, and we go to the Metro Church down there, and that was a whole different thing. And she's like, this is just the coolest thing ever. And then we're getting ready to leave that and go back up to Kansas City to visit a friend of mine, and he said, don't go through Memphis, because that was our plan. Be careful, because if you come in at night, you can get the wrong neighborhoods, and you really need to know where you're going, blah, 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 all this stuff. So that kind of scared me. I thought, I know where West Monroe is. I'll just go up through Arkansas, it'll be fine. So we'll just go back there, stay there, and then travel up to Kansas. And so that's what we did. And on the way there, we were on the last stretch on the interstate, and my daughter was sleeping, and I just started praying. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, the first time I went through West Monroe, I was supposed to meet with a gal named Ellen Kirby. She is like the writer of a women's ministry that is kind of nationwide. It's really great. It's called Heart Mom, and I wanted to get it and bring it back to Melba, but when I arranged to meet with her, that when I came to West Monroe, there was a conflict in her schedule, and she wasn't able to meet with me. And so we were coming back through West Monroe, and I thought, you know what, Lord, if I'm supposed to meet with Joe Neal this time, open those doors. Please just swing those doors open. If there's something else you want me to see, because this has been a beautiful experience being with these people in this church, just swing those doors wide open. Just let me have whatever it is you need me to have. I'm willing. Just take me wherever. And he took me serious. As we got there, I called Joe Neal, and I was like, hey, Joe Neal, is there any chance that we can meet? She's like, yeah, let's meet in the morning. And I called Diane. I'm like, hey, we're coming back through town. Is there any way that you can tell us what we could do for the evening, just to have a little fun? She's like, absolutely. Come down to my shop. We'll show you around. So Diane and Crystal takes us around for this grand tour. It's just wonderful. We're having the greatest time. They're so kind and so sweet and so loving. And then I meet with Joe Neal, and I'm like, well, thanks God, you're just providing all these wonderful people to just surround me this time, and otherwise it's going to be a very scary experience. Going to Memphis, and I thought, oh, and then Diane would say, you need to stay overnight, because tomorrow we need to do something else. So I'm like, okay. So we stay overnight, and they take us out, and they just love on us. Oh my gosh, I don't think I've ever been so loved on by perfect strangers ever before. And they just took us around to all the places, and they bought us this food and smorgasbord. It was amazing. And then they said, you know what you need to do? You need to go celebrate recovery. And I've never been to celebrate recovery. Okay, I'll go. And then Diane says, but you need a better hotel. You're staying at the Red Roof Inn. She's somewhere better. So she moves us over there. We go to celebrate recovery, and it was amazing. I mean, it was just like, wow, there's just so much going on, and everything just flowed so well. The opportunities just kept coming up. And then we were talking to a guy, Tim Mize, and he was standing there, and he's like, you know what you guys need to do is you need to come out tomorrow for a Bible study. And I thought, yeah, let's do it. And so then he says, all right. So meet us down at the thing. Diane will drive you, and blah, blah, blah. So then, but then we also went to Fishers of Men after Celebrate Recovery. I swear some of this really does tie together. So we go out to Fishers of Men, which is where after Celebrate Recovery, a bunch of people, a lot of men, go out to the lake, out to the river, and they get in boats, and they go out to this island. It's very Huck Finn, Tom Sawyer-ish, and it's like trees and a bonfire and the whole thing. And then these grown men, they're pulling up lunge lines and trout lines, I don't know what it is, but nets. They don't fish like the girls down there. But, and these grown men are standing in a circle, and they're just praying for each other. And they're praying about each other, they're praying for their families, they're praying for just everything in the middle of the night, in the dark. And I just thought, do we even have these men in Idaho? This is what I want. I want this. Why? This is amazing. And I saw that, I don't know, I was completely moved. So the next day, we go down and we meet Tim Mize. Well, it turns out that Tim Mize is the bodyguard to that Phil Robertson that's like the Duck Dynasty guy. This was a show that was a long time ago. It was pretty popular. And so Phil was there, it was at his house. And we did this little thing, he taught us how to cook, and then he sat down and did a Bible study. It was just like Christianity 101. It was the gospel. And he was just trying to get people to accept Jesus Christ. It wasn't anything deeper than that. I mean, it was just like the basic stuff. And there was a couple gals there that were raised Catholic. And he asked anybody if they wanted to be baptized, and we could, then those girls kept asking more questions about their baptism, about their christening or their blessing or whatever it was that was done to them as children in the Catholic Church. And they thought, do I need something different? I mean, like, was that even what it was supposed to be? They were texting their mothers, they were asking Phil all these questions, and then Phil would just sit there and he'd just open up his Bible and he would flip. Well, looky here. And then he'd read scripture and he'd flip back. Oh, looky here. And he'd read and do this thing. And I just listened to that and I thought, he's showing me. Phil is showing me. He is doing exactly what I asked in the very beginning. And I think, thank you, God. And it took me a long time to actually realize the significance of how Phil was doing that. It was not his opinion, it was not his interpretation. He literally was showing me exactly why baptism was important. And I just felt this tremendous thing overcome me, and I just started crying. And he took me to the river. And Phil, it tells everybody about the state that he's like, how we go, Idaho. And so we all get up and we start going down, and one of the guys that works for him, Dan, he starts telling me, there's alligators in these waters, and there's comrades in these waters. Are you sure this is what you want to do? And I thought, why would you tell me such things? But I ended up going into that water completely fearless. Completely fearless. And Phil baptized me that day. And when I came out of the water, I heard as clear as day, Jill, you gotta get rid of that alcohol. I know you're not drinking all the time, but you gotta get rid of it. It's gotta be gone. And you gotta stop chasing after these guys. This is not what I want for you. And I thought, those are the two things I do really well. But it was clear. There was no disputing that that's exactly what God was telling me when I came out of that water. I'm way behind on my papers. Sorry. I'm really behind on time too. Okay. So to this day, I feel like I was so blessed that whole trip, that time in Louisiana, the people that God opened those doors for me. I mean, he swung them open, and he had people pushing me. He had people driving me. He had people housing me. I mean, it was amazing. And my daughter was there to witness the whole thing. She wasn't quite to the point where she was ready to do any of those things, any of the baptism or anything, which was fun. To this day, I have Diane and Crystal as my prayer warriors down there, and I feel like when I go to visit them, it's like a little second home. And I feel like I'm connected to that church as well. And it's so weird because that was one of my things, like, why, if we're going to all these different churches and we have different names, why are we all divided? And then I go to that church and I feel like this is a home too. And it was just, I don't know, it was something. So then, like, the next month I became a flight attendant because, I'm random like that. So then I spent a month in Texas and training, and then I went to Denver, and my daughter, it was her senior year, and she was here, and she was behaving like I was in high school. She was getting pretty wild and stuff. And so I was trying to figure all this stuff out and manage all this stuff, and that was just really hard. But at some point I had taken my car down there, and so then I was trying to make sure that Montana had a Jeep and had all of her stuff here to where she could take care of her stuff, because I obviously wasn't there to help her. So I talked to a mutual friend and said, hey, can you help me with my daughter's brakes? He says, yes. Meet me over at my friend Derek's house, and we'll work on the brakes because he has a garage. So I pull up to Derek's house, and there's my friend standing there, and here comes this guy. I'm like, Derek Henry, I know him. And he comes out with his little blue coffee cup, and his daughter, and her leggings, and her little bun on her head. She's so cute, little flower. And I thought, yeah, hey. He's getting cute. And he's different. He's different. And he, like I said, he had been watching me. He knew what I had been going through before I knew that he knew. And apparently he had tried to talk to me a couple times, because apparently I'm intimidating. So he didn't. So that day, we started talking. I put him back on Facebook again, after kicking him off when we had our turmoil a few years before. And we spoke every day since. And then about 48 days later, we got married. Slow apparently. But I look at our union today, and I see that my husband has never taken a sip of alcohol. If I was still drinking, I would not have been appealing to him. If I was still drinking, he probably wouldn't have been appealing to me. I would have thought he was kind of a fuddy-duddy, I don't know, like, oh, you can't go out to dinner and have just a beer, really? But because that was something that I was not wanting in my life, he didn't want in his spouse. If I was still pursuing men, I would have found one. And I wouldn't have been available for my husband when he was presented to me. And I'm pretty sure he would like to make us that. So I look at that and I think, God told me what he wanted. That day, 6 months prior, coming out of the water, and I didn't know why. I mean, I kind of knew there was probably, whatever, like obviously I needed to get rid of alcohol. It had been a struggle for me. And I couldn't just have an occasional beer here or there anymore. It just had to be gone. He told me what he wanted. Didn't say why, but he had plans for me. Derek and I have now been married for nearly 7 years. We've added our daughter Adeline, that's 5. We've also inherited our grandson Nathaniel. I've inherited his 2 children. He's inherited my Montana. And God gave us this big, beautiful family, which I've always wanted a big family too. I told my daughter she was going to have 6 kids just so I have my big family. Well, the pressure's off her now. So a few years after we got married, though, we went through a very difficult time with my daughter Montana. A lot of you here know that she sits in prison right now, and that's why we have Nathaniel. And I look at that, and I think that I could not have gotten through that as well without my faith and without trusting in the Lord that there was something else there. He prepared me for those events. He gave me so many different opportunities to just start trusting in him. And without that, I feel like I would have been curled up in the fetal position, in a ball. I would have run away. I would have checked out. I don't know what I would have done. But he prepared me. He gave me a family. He gave me a strong family. And most of all, he gave me a strong faith to know that God's in control of all of it, no matter how ugly, no matter how hard. He gave me a solid church that supported us, that loved us, that prayed for us, and prayed for my daughter despite what was going on with her. He also gave me peace in my heart to recognize the blessings that were coming our way in the midst of the worst thing that could have possibly happened to us in our lifetime, I feel like. We had so many blessings as we look back, and we're so amazed that God just kept giving us little reminders that he loves us, that he's there with us, and he's never going to leave our side. Proverbs 3, which most people know, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, and in all ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. Without that faith in the Lord, without that trust in the Lord, I literally would have been a wreck. Without my husband and family, I would have given up. And God gave it to me. There's no doubt in my mind. Derek was placed literally in the palm of God's hand to me. I couldn't explain it any other way. I know that even all that stuff that has happened, that in the end, like all the things that happened in my life that I did not understand when they were happening, and And then later on, I look back and I think, oh, that's exactly why it happened. That's exactly why God gave me those trials. And that's another one of those scriptures that I love, the one about the trials considered a blessing. Absolutely, I totally do. But I know that even the stuff that's not now will be used for good. So I do fall short often. I'm currently working on James 1:26 and trying to rein in my tongue. I'm still a cusser. Be better about that. God has changed my life. He's changed who I am. I surrendered to Him, and my life has not been without trials. It's not been without turmoil. But I have a hope that I didn't have before. I have a joy that exists in me when the times are tough that I never had before. I have a love from my Father that I have never known before knowing Him. My sister-in-law, the one that goes to the church across the street, she had told Pastor Chris once that when I came to Christ, I was living with them for the most part. Like the biggest changes was when I was living in their home. And she said that she saw my transformation from the old Jill into the new Jill with Jesus. And there was no doubt in her mind that it was the truth, that it was God. There was no way that I could have made that transformation without God being involved. And to me, obviously I very much know that is true. There's no way that I could transform from the person that I was to the person that I am without His hand. And it was I wonder someday, like, what impact is that going to be? What seed did that plant for my family later down the road? You know, what are they going to do with that? So I encourage you to, as you go through your days, to keep planting seeds with the people that you come across. Keep acting when Jesus prompts you. You never know what God's plan is for the person that you're talking to. It could be that same kind of wild girl that looks like she's just carrying on another generation of drinking and partying and doing her thing and not living anything to glorify God. But you never know what those seeds are going to be. And that one day, that person that you talk to will look back at those seeds when they are in the middle of turmoil, in the middle of crisis. And you know, there was something in that person that I want. So I need to seek it. And they know that that one thing is Jesus. So don't pass up those opportunities and those nudgings from Christ. I know that God loves me and He speaks to me and He guides me. God continually puts people in my life that remind me of that love and His goodness, His grace, and the plans that He has for me. Jeremiah 29:11 is another one of my great things that I absolutely totally believe in with the plans. I know He had a plan for me to be with Derek and to have our family. 2 Corinthians 5:17 is another. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone, and the new is here. So I'm here, the new creation. And I love you all.
Any questions?
I was supposed to somehow sum that up, but I think Jill did. What a job. What a job. One thing I would like to say is, let us never let another person feel alone when they come in our door. They come here, this may be their only chance, last chance. It may be desperation brought them to where they were. Let's let them not go away feeling abandoned or alone. Remember that? Let's pray.